To log into the ScrimmageSim business simulation, navigate to the URL scrimmagesim.com. Next, select Login from the upper right corner. Then select your university from the pull-down list, followed by your course. Click on Next, and you'll be in a login screen. Notice the URL here. In this case, it's server1.scrimmagesim.net. The URL may have a subdomain. In this case, it's server1, and it may be different than scrimmagesim.com. This depends on where your course has been placed in the ScrimmageSim system. This is a good page to bookmark because this will take you right to the login screen without having to go through the pull-down list options. To log in, enter the tenant number assigned to your course, put in the user ID that is assigned to you, and then enter the password. That's the default password your professor provided. Here you'll click Login Next. Once you've logged in and put your name and email to your account, if you forgot your new password, you can click on Forget Password as long as you have the correct user ID and tenant, and you'll get an email with a link that would allow you to reset your password. Since this is the first time that we're logging in, that's not possible. Click on Login. Next, we have a screen where you have to reset your password. The only requirements for a password is that it must be 6 characters long. No requirement for numbers or capitals or special characters. After entering the password, you'll have a screen where you need to enter your user data. You're going to enter your name and an email address. The name is for your professor to have to associate the user account with you, and the email address, again, is important in case you need to reset your password. Clicking on Enter, and depending on your course, you may have to enter a license key. A license key is purchased from your university's bookstore. If you have a license key requirement, enter the license key at this point. After entering the license key, if you've done it correctly, you'll be at the main screen of the simulation where there are 2 options. First, you can get instructions for any of the scenarios that you're going to be using in the course by using the instructions menu and clicking on the appropriate scenario. This will open up another browser tab and download the document. Also, from this screen, you can select the particular scenario that you're going to be using in class. Clicking on Select Scenario will give you a list of the scenarios that are available for your course. Usually they're done in order from the lowest numbered scenario to the highest numbered scenario. In this case, we're going to look at the very introduction, Scenario 100, the basic brewery. Click on Select. You'll get a screen that will list scenario runs. There are some scenarios where they can be run more than one time. In this case, there's only one simulation run, so we select that run. We're now on the main screen of Arborcrest AL Studios in the simulation. If your instructor wants you to submit proof that you have logged into the system correctly, you can just take a screenshot of this area to the top right that shows the tenant, the user number, and your name. ScrimmageSim operates using a menu system. Starting from the left, we'll go through all the menu options. The first option is Sales. Selecting this menu will give you a list in table format of all the sales orders that Arborcrest AL Studios has had over the last 3 years. Most of the screens in ScrimmageSim have a table like this, and there are a number of features of this table that are very useful. For example, you can sort by any of the column headings merely by clicking on the column heading. Also, many of these tables and these grid controls have filters where you can select out and look at a particular product versus any of the other products. Our demand comes from a distributor who every Wednesday will want to pick up an order of the 3 products we have. If we have those products in stock, we will end up selling to the distributor. If we're out of stock, we will lose those sales and there will be no back orders. Another feature of these grids is that they can all be exported into a spreadsheet. Primarily clicking on export and you will have a downloaded spreadsheet from this particular grid. Next, we'll be able to open another window. Just like SAP software that uses sessions or multiple windows to look at the system, Scrim&Sim allows you to have different windows open using different browser tabs. We can come back to this design screen at any time and click refresh and get the latest data from the simulation. Again, we're running a business database with a Scrim&Sim simulation. Next, we could also look at sales on a monthly basis. This is the same information, but just aggregated for each particular month. And again, it's a grid control that operates the same way. A useful report here is the sales graph. This shows us a 3-year history of our sales on a weekly basis. And as we move forward into 2018, we will see this graph extend as we go through the simulation. If we click on the legend, we can turn off any of these particular graphs. So if we want to see Alley Cat by itself, we merely click on the legend for the Edgar and the Taj Mahal and turn the graphs off. If we want to see what Edgar is doing, we can see that it's seasonal, higher sales in the winter than the summer. And Taj Mahal, we can see that it's increasing, but fairly steady over the 3 years. Next, we have the production options. The only decision we have to make in this first scenario is what beers to produce and when. We do this by creating a production order. In the production order screen, there are a number of things that are options that we are not going to use. All we need to do with this screen is pick the particular product we want to make, Alley Cat, Edgar, or Taj Mahal, from the pull down, and leave everything else the same. The default quantity is 1240. That's the best approach. That fills an entire fermenter and makes sure that we're getting maximum production. You could enter a larger quantity and the simulation would work, but you might end up producing a less than full batch, which would lose capacity and lose net income. To make the production order, we click on the Create Production Order button, and the production order is listed in the grid below. In the beginning, all we need to do is have 4 production orders entered. It really doesn't matter which products we pick. Once a simulation starts operating, you will see the patterns, you will see how demand is laid out, you'll see how production increases your inventory, and it will become apparent what products to make and when. In this case, I have 4 fermenters. I know that Alley Cat is going to start to sell in the summer, so I'm going to make 2 orders for Alley Cat. I'm going to make an order for Edgar Ale, and I'm going to make an order for Taj Mahal. If I accidentally click Create Production Order when I did not intend to, I can scroll down and delete any of the production orders. They're listed by the most recent one first. The last order we created was 30007, and that's the one I want to delete. Care must be exercised when deleting a production order, because if that order is in process, what you're doing is opening the valves and dumping the beer down the drain. It's okay to delete a production order if it's not in process, and that's the case where we're starting the simulation. But once the simulation is running, it's important to check to make sure that that production order is not in process before you delete it. I'm going to delete this production order, and now I have 4 orders ready to go. What you're going to want to do is make 4 production orders. They're going to take 14 days to produce and 1 day to be bottled. Before you get to that 14th day, you want to create a second set of 4 production orders to keep the fermenters operating at full capacity. Next, we're going to open another window so that we can see those production orders in process. We're going to go from the production menu and select Work Center Queue. Currently, there are no production orders listed because the simulation is not operating. As soon as the simulation is operating, you'll see each of those production orders listed, and most importantly, the amount of time that's remaining until those production orders are completed. Next, I'm going to open another window and look at the inventory options. First, I have the finished inventory. This is a table that shows the current number of cases on hand. I can see that with Alley Cat, I have about 2,500 cases, and Edgar and Taj are near 6,000 each. That's enough inventory to last for about a month and a half, which means that as long as you're producing beer in the beginning, it's not critical what your selection is. Once we get towards the end of January, you're going to want to start to think about that more carefully. But you'll have enough experience, you'll have enough of a trajectory of the inventory to be able to make that decision easily. The next report we'll look at is lost sales. Currently, there are no lost sales. That will change once we get into the summer months because the demand is going to exceed our capacity. The most important thing here is that our most profitable beer, Taj Mahal, does not show up on the lost sales list. It should be Edgar Ale because that's the beer that has the lowest profit margin. Next, we can look at a history table. This will have a daily value of our inventory as the simulation operates, and this can be exported to be used in a spreadsheet for planning. Finally, perhaps the most useful screen is the inventory history graph. Currently, it's not very interesting because there's just a single data point showing our inventory levels. But as the simulation runs over time, we'll see how the inventory grows when we have production and how inventory is reduced when our distributor comes and purchases our beer. This is an important graph, so we'll leave this window open. Next, we want to look at the results. First, we have a financial statement. The financial statement is in a tree control, and the number that's listed here with the income statement will be our net income, and that's what we're going to use to evaluate how the team performs. The first part of this display is related to income. The second part is the balance sheet, which shows our assets and who owns those assets, whether it's a lender, in the case of a liability, or the owners of the business themselves. Finally, the results we can also see student ranking. The student ranking will show which team has the highest net income at any point in the simulation. Once time starts advancing in the simulation, you can check on the status of your production orders by clicking on Work Center Queue tab, clicking Refresh, and we'll see that there are 4 production orders. Each one of the 4 fermenters has a production order. You can look at the material to see that Alley Cat is on fermenter number 1 and 2, Edgar Ale is on fermenter number 3, and Taj Mahal is on fermenter number 4. All 4 of these orders will be done fermenting in 13 days. They'll spend 1 day being bottled, and it will show up in inventory after that. One thing that's also worth looking at is the sequence number. Sequence number 0 means that that is a production order in process. When we create some additional production orders, they will get in queue behind the orders that are in production, and they'll have sequence number 1, sequence number 2, and so on. Next, we can look at the history graph. And when we refresh the history graph, only 1 day is advanced, and the inventory levels are the same. It's not Wednesday yet. Our distributor comes once every Wednesday to purchase beer from us. When the simulation advances to January 3rd, we can check on the inventory history graph again. We can refresh the screen and see that there's been a significant order for the Edgar Ale and the Taj Mahal, and a much smaller order for the Alley Cat beer. We can always check in any of these screens the simulation date and time. So it's now on January 3rd. If we look at the Work Center queue and refresh that, 12 days, those production orders are going to be complete. So sometime before then, we'll want to schedule 4 more production orders. When we get to day 10, we can now get a good idea of how quickly our inventory is being reduced by sales. For Edgar and Taj Mahal, this is a peak season. We can see that the inventory drops off fairly quickly. For Alley Cat, not so much, but when April comes, it's going to be significant, so we want to build that inventory up. At this time, we're at day 10, and it's time to create some more production orders. And for this simulation, I'm going to repeat the pattern we had before. 2 orders of Alley Cat, 1 order of Edgar, 1 order of Taj Mahal. When I go over to the Work Center Queue tab, and I click on Refresh, I don't see any new production orders yet because the simulation hasn't advanced another day. Once the simulation advances to day 11, we'll be able to click on refresh, and we'll see that there are 4 more production orders with sequence number 1 that are in queue waiting for those first set of production orders to be complete. As the simulation advances, when we get to day 15, 4 production orders are complete, and when we go to the history graph, we'll see we have 1 more day for them to show up. From day 1 to day 15, they've been fermenting. The simulation, when it advances to day 16, we'll see that our inventory increases, and that we basically got the inventory close to where it was for Edgar and Taj Mahal with 1 production run. For Alley Cat, we got a significant increase in the inventory to try to prepare for summer, when we're going to have more demand than capacity. With that, you have enough information on how Scrim and Sim works to run the first simulation. To prepare for class, make sure that you have 4 production orders ready to go, so when the simulation starts, you immediately start production. Also, remember you're working as a team, so make sure that you coordinate your activities. If you make 4 production orders and your teammate makes 4 production orders, there will be 8 production orders in the system. You and your teammates are all working with one company and need to work together to have success.